Well, I've been dinking around with a planer today, trying to get it ready to go. Went through and replaced all the, well, I'm working on replacing all the opener bearings. I've done in my last two coulters. I did all the other ones. I actually replaced, well, I didn't replace them. When I got this planer, it was a runner opener and it only had discs on the fertilizer. And the nice thing about an Oliver unit, and I don't know if any of the other planters are this way or not, because this is the only, Oliver and White are the only ones I have experience with, but if you got a runner opener or a disc opener, either way, they use the same row unit, and the holes for the disc openers are drilled and tapped in there already. All you got to do is take the runners off, get the coulters and the bolts, and you can put coulters on a runner opener planter. And just in case anybody, because the 540, the 543, the 5400, which is all basically the same frame. The 543 and the 5400, they beefed them up a little bit, but for all intents and purposes, it's the same planter. And then the 5400 is obviously an air planter, and the 540 and the 543 are plate planters. But for all intents and purposes, they're the same family, I guess you'd want to call it. But if you got any of those three planters and you either want to convert them to disc opener or you're working on them, they are one side's right hand thread, one side's left hand thread. The left hand side is right hand thread and the right hand side is left hand thread, so they're opposite. That way, as the coulter's spinning, it's always trying to tighten the bolt, and you can't have your coulter doesn't fall off. So that's that, and these are my last two I got going. This one's done. I wanted to have this so that I could show you. And this one is apart. That's the hub, that's the bearing, and that's the bolt. When you assemble this, the bolt's actually trapped in the hub. You can't take the bolt off. Now that style of coulter, which is the newer one, these are actually Ingersolls that I got from Agco. These are Canadian coulters, which Ingersoll makes really good, really nice tough wear parts. Right there, made in Canada. But this style actually has a sealed bearing, and you pop that cap off, and you can take it's just got a regular hex head bolt, right and left hand thread you take off. These older bearings are actually technically greasable. They have a dust shield, but there's no seal. And what you do, normally when you're using it, there's a pipe plug here, but I think there's actually a service interval on them, but for all intents and purposes, probably only once or twice a season, probably once at the beginning and once in the middle of the season. You take your pipe plug out, and you get a 1/4 inch pipe plug thread grease zerk to stick in there, and you can pump that hub full of grease and repack that bearing. And then you take the zerk out and put the plug back in, because you don't want to run a zerk on here because there's nothing to protect it. You break it off, and then you can get dirt inside there and wipe the bearing out. And I'm not going to show the whole process of what I'm doing here, because technically this is not the best way to do it. I did this same thing on my grain drill last fall before I planted wheat. I think there's 3 or 4 coulters on there that I did because the bearings were getting loose. And that hub is this style, or closer to this style. And it's flat for the most part, so I could take these things down in the shop press, and because when you rivet, there's 2 processes. You gotta stake them, and then you gotta peen them. And when you stake them, you take the rivet. If I get one to, probably can't get one to stand up. You take the rivet and you drive force down on it, and what it's supposed to do is take the rivet and swell it up in the hole so that it's a tight fit, because right now they're loose. They just wobble around in there. So what you're supposed to do is press it. That'll stake it, and then when you're doing it by hand, you take the ball end of a ball peen hammer and you work your way around the outside of the rivet and flatten it out, and that makes the head bigger so that the coulter can't pop off. Well, these hubs have this big old gusset cast in them, so I can't get them in the damn press. So what I gotta do, which is not the best way to do it, and if these coulters were going to be seeing a couple thousand acres over the next 2 years, it probably wouldn't work, but for what I'm doing, it's going to be fine. As I got a 3-pound sledgehammer, and I'm staking them with that, and the problem is, since you're striking it, they don't get a chance to swell up all the way before you take the head and mushroom it over, and they tighten up, but they don't tighten up. They stay a little loose. So, like I say, I'm not going to show the whole process because technically this isn't the best way to do it, and I would assume if they did this in a factory setting, they probably have a fixture that they set the hub in upside down with the rivets in it. You set the coulter on there, and then they probably had a press with a die in it that came and hit that and did it all in one operation. Guarantee it. But doing it by hand is obviously the only option I got, and I'm sure that they probably make a tool for this. Well, I doubt they actually make a tool for coulters, because normally if you wear the coulter out, you just pitch it, because these are, well, like those are throwaway coulters. You're not meant to change the hub and put new bearings in it. You just run them till they're out of, or till they're too small, and you pitch them and get new ones, which is why they're riveted together. But these coulters, obviously they're 50-something odd years old, but they still measure 13 1/8 across the outside, and they're supposed to started out life as 13 1/2, so they're more like an 1/8 inch all the way around. Hell, they're almost brand new still, so slap new bearings in them, and for what I'm doing, it'll last the rest of what I need it to. I could put $13 bearings in it, or I can put $30-something coulters on it. I'm going to go with $13 bearing. So, anyway, get this one put back together, get that put back on, and I got a couple other small things to do and grease it, and she'll be ready to go. So, I'm going to get these back on, and we'll catch you in a little bit. And I guess before I get too far into this, I should make mention, in case anybody else decides they want to do this, not that anybody else is going to, but nice little tidbit of information to have. These bearings are, the inner race is flush on one side and has this shoulder on the other side. The shoulder faces towards, like, the back of the coulter, because this has a boss cast on the coulter frame that butts up against it that spaces the coulter out to the proper distance. If you put it in the other way, you would wedge the coulter against the frame and it probably wouldn't turn. And in case anybody's interested, the AGCO part number for these is a W247167B. So, and these are China bearings, so I probably got corona now from handling them. Okay, so the next thing I got going on here is, for the last 2 years, I've had issues with my planter box, or with my boxes coming loose from the base. These are the seed boxes. Got the one missing there. That's this one, obviously. And they'll either wobble around and rotate on the base, and they'll start, if they go too far, they'll start smacking the transport wheels. Or I had one last year that actually slipped off the base and spilled some seed. It came like a quarter of the way off. Well, 2 years ago I had that issue right at the end of the season, and I think what's happened is as these fiberglass boxes got older, the bottom stretched a little bit and they don't fit as tight as they should. So after it happened 2 years ago, at the beginning of last season, I got, these have body clips on them that just slip over the fiberglass and pinch it. And then these L tabs are supposed to hold them on the base like that. Well, the original one just had like number 8 self-tapper body screws in them. So I got rid of those and got some 1/4-20 body clips that I could put actual bolts in, so I can get some, actually tighten them. And that kind of helped, but I still had the issue last year. So this year I'm going to do what I was trying to avoid, and I'm just going to go through here and weld these tabs onto the base, because I don't know what else to do. I broke a box 2 years ago when it rattled loose and it split the hole, or broke the hole out, which pissed me off because I obviously have a bunch of these boxes, but I like to keep a bunch of these boxes. And so in order to avoid that, and basically I'm out of ideas as to what to do and to save parts and not hurt the planter and still be able to use it, I'm just going through and welding these tabs right to the base so that it is what it is. It ain't moving. So she's on there rigid now. So hopefully that takes care of that. So that's one done. Got to do 3 more. Well, I got done just in time for it to start spitting rain. So, but all those bearings are changed out. All the boxes are fixed-ish, hopefully. Time will tell if that took care of it. All the chains are greased except for the 2 on the jack shaft, because I don't grease those until I'm got my plates and everything set, so that I'm not handling greasy chain while I'm figuring out sprockets, because that sucks. And everything's greased, so that should be everything. Like I say, I did a fair bit of this last year. Replaced both the chains on from the drive wheel and the chain on the clutch on both sides. Shimmed the shafts on the row units to get the gears to mesh better. Replaced all the down pressure springs on the... I replaced all of these guys. Seems like I did more to it. I think I worked on this thing for 2 days last year. I don't remember what all I did to it. But anyhow, I think the only thing I got left, well, actually that's it. Everything, well, technically I gotta swap the grinder all back over. I have it still set on the high-speed setting for wheat, and I gotta swap it back over to the low-speed setting for beans, but that I can do when I bring it over here to get my transmission settings figured out for my population. So, which is gonna be the next step for both the planter and the drills, to bring them over here when my seed shows up and figure out my plates and sprockets for this and my transmission setting for the drill. So yeah, and because inevitably I've got all the negative idiots that like to show up, well, at least I did before, that like to show up and give me shit and say I'm not farming because this is the stuff that what I use to plant corn with, and I use that drill to plant beans with. Well, first off, you ain't got no money or time involved in it, so what the fuck does it matter to you anyhow what equipment I use? And second off, I bought this thing when I was 16 years old, 15 or 16 years old, for $650, and I've been using it ever since, and it hasn't let me down one time. And I've planted 200 bushel an acre corn with this thing. So you know what, if you don't like the fact that I'm still using a 50-year-old plate planter to plant corn, fuck ya. There's the door. Show yourself out and don't let it hit you in the ass. So anyway, I think, according to the radar, this was just supposed to be a quick sprinkle, and we were going to be done with it. So I'm going to hop on the old 55 here and run this thing back over to the barn so it's not sitting out in the rain. And I guess that does it for this one, and we will catch y'all on the next one.